Jack Parker, a gentle construction worker with a yellow hard hat, walked home along Maple Street every evening, greeting neighbors because he believed kindness cost nothing, and that belief lived in his bones like steel rebar. On a warm June Friday, he slowed near the faded blue bungalow of Mrs. Eleanor Briggs, an 83-year-old widow who once taught piano, but now moved with a silver cane, the porch paint peeling like dry bark. Jack noticed cardboard boxes piled like tottering towers beside her porch, and he felt a tug of worry because the forecast promised rain before nightfall, thunder already rumbling far beyond the oak trees. Mrs. Briggs, balancing a box marked dishes, tried to unlock her front door, but the key shook in her small hand and tapped against the brass plate with a sad metallic clink, louder than the distant storm. Jack hurried up the walk and gently asked if she needed help, keeping his voice soft so she would not feel embarrassed by the offer, even though his work boots thudded like drums on the wooden steps. She smiled with relief and admitted that her daughter had meant to come by. Yet plans had changed, leaving her alone to finish moving heavier belongings from the garage into the house before dark. Jack set down his lunch pail, rolled up his sleeves, and lifted boxes two at a time, surprised how light they felt compared with the rebar and cement bags he hauled at work. Mrs. Briggs followed slowly, pointing out which boxes went to the kitchen, which to the spare bedroom, and which beside the piano where pictures of her late husband waited like patient friends. He listened closely, treating each direction like a blueprint, because respecting her wishes mattered more than finishing quickly, and he nodded after every instruction so she knew he understood. When sweat trickled into his eyes, he still smiled, remembering his own Nana who had always said, "Do good first, and good will find you later," a motto he kept pinned inside his hard hat. Inside, the house smelled of lemon polish and old sheet music, notes that seemed to flutter from the dusty keys whenever the door creaked open or a breeze slipped through cracked windows. Jack stacked boxes neatly, leaving clear paths so Mrs. Briggs could walk without fear of tripping, and he taped fragile labels on anything that clinked, working with the care of a museum guard. Between trips, she insisted he accept a glass of iced tea, and they rested on the porch where pink petunias leaned over chipped railings like little fans applauding his effort and her gratitude. She told him stories about her late husband Henry, who built that porch with his own hands one spring before war, using wooden pegs instead of nails because pegs swelled tight in damp weather. Jack listened, hearing love in her voice, and nodded even when he did not fully understand the history, because listening is another kind of help, one that costs only patience. When the sky darkened, he fetched his truck, backed it carefully to the garage, and loaded the last 3 boxes plus an antique cedar chest embroidered with brass corners that gleamed like sunrise. The cedar chest was heavier than it looked, packed with photo albums, and he carried it alone, so Mrs. Briggs would not strain her back climbing the truck's tailgate, his arms trembling yet steady. Fog rolled in with the evening breeze, filling the street with cool mist. Yet Jack kept working until every fragile keepsake stood safe beyond the threshold and dry beneath the roof. At last the porch was clear, the garage swept, and rain only tapped shyly on leaves, never finding a single exposed box to ruin, as though even the weather respected the deed. Mrs. Briggs pressed a folded $5 bill into his palm, insisting on gas money, but Jack gently returned it, saying her smile was payment enough and worth more than paper. She tried again, offering a plate of oatmeal cookies wrapped in wax paper, and this time he accepted because refusing twice might seem rude and hurt her giving heart. Before leaving, he replaced a loose porch board, hammering nails from his tool belt, and told her he would stop by tomorrow to finish repainting the railing for free because flaking paint bothered him. She blinked back tears, touched a hand to his cheek like a proud grandmother, and whispered that Henry would have liked him very much, her voice thin but strong. Jack drove home under streetlights glowing through rain, feeling lighter than after any payday bonus, and humming a tune he did not recognize but found calming like ocean waves. That night he wrote in his pocket notebook, "Help Mrs. Briggs move, felt good," a simple note he thought no one else would ever read, yet he started twice from memory. He did not know that paragraph of kindness would soon turn into a chapter that changed his entire life story, spinning faster than a cement mixer drum. A week passed, then another, filled with cement pours, steel beams, and lunchtime jokes with the crew. Yet his mind often drifted back to the blue bungalow and its music. He returned twice more, once to seal a tiny roof leak he noticed, and once just to sit on the porch while Mrs. Briggs played a gentle waltz on her upright piano, keys chiming like rain on glass. Neighbors began to wave at him with new warmth, having heard how he helped the widow, and a few even asked him to look at squeaky doors or cracked steps, believing he had magic in his toolbox. Jack never charged a cent, saying he was off the clock, and each small favor felt like adding another brick to an invisible bridge between strangers, sturdy and unseen. On the last Friday of July, as sunlight baked the job site, a certified letter reached the office addressed to Mr. Jack Parker, personal, the envelope thick and cream-colored. The foreman, Mr. Diaz, teased him about secret admirers, but Jack only laughed and tucked the envelope into his vest until break time, heart thumping in curious beats. When he finally opened it, he saw the elegant cursive of Mrs. Briggs across the top, and below that a single sentence written by a lawyer on official letterhead stamped with golden scales. The sentence said Mrs. Briggs had included him in her will and requested his presence at a meeting the next Monday morning at 10 o'clock sharp. Jack stared at the words, heart pounding harder than any jackhammer, wondering why someone he barely knew would think of him in such a serious way, breath catching light and quick. Over the weekend, he practiced polite ways to decline money, believing wills were for family, not passing helpers, yet curiosity fluttered in his chest like a caged bird. Sunday evening, he pressed his only ironed shirt, polished his work boots until they shone like wet stone, and rehearsed greeting the lawyer without sounding nervous, repeating sentences in the mirror. He drove to the law office Monday, thinking of promises he had made to his late Nana about staying humble, and parked beside polished cars that made his truck look very old and dented. In the waiting room, he felt out of place among leather chairs and quiet ticking clocks, but he remembered Mrs. Briggs' porch lemon scent and steadied his breath with slow counts to 5. When the door opened and the lawyer invited him inside, Jack stepped forward, unaware that the next 10 minutes would redraw the blueprint of his future like a fresh set of plans unrolled on a table. Jack sat in the lawyer's office, hands folded tight, the smell of polished wood and old books making him feel he had wandered into a grand library in muddy boots. The lawyer, Ms. Patel, wore round glasses and spoke with a calm voice that reminded Jack of water running over smooth stones in a creek after spring rain. She thanked him for coming, explained that Mrs. Briggs could not be present because she was resting, then opened a thick folder sealed with a blue ribbon. His fingers drummed the chair arm, measuring time like he timed concrete pours at work, steady so nothing cracked, his pulse keeping rhythm with each silent tick of the wall clock. Miss Patel read a short statement written by Mrs. Briggs in neat cursive, saying that Jack's kindness had brought her hope during a lonely time. The statement said Mrs. Briggs wanted to give him something that would help him keep spreading that hope to others long after she herself was gone. The thought warmed her like sunlight on seeds. Jack swallowed, feeling the room tilt, and tried to speak, but only a small scratchy sound left his throat. Each lift felt like setting a promise gently on a shelf. Miss Patel smiled gently and slid a legal document across the desk, the paper thick and cream-colored, edges lined with tiny gold dots, as if paper itself could feel safe near her, like sparks that fade yet leave warm copper trails. Jack took a deep breath and read the first line, which said that Mrs. Briggs was granting him ownership of her house, the very blue bungalow he had helped protect from the rain. He blinked twice, sure he had misread, then read it again, tracing the letters with one rough fingertip like a child learning to spell. They almost looked unreal, a row of giant zeros marching across the page. The document also set aside a savings account that Henry Briggs had built over many years of careful planning, and the account was to be used only for repairs, teaching music, and community projects. They were bigger than any wage he had earned. Jack looked up, mouth open, and asked why she would give so much to someone she had known only a month. Jack felt bashful under that bright gaze. Miss Patel pointed to a second page where Mrs. Briggs had written that Jack reminded her of Henry's own giving spirit, and she believed the house and money would become tools in the right hands, their signatures looped in careful ink below hers. A warm tear rolled down Jack's cheek, surprising him, because he rarely cried, even when concrete dust stung his eyes on windy days. Jack nodded, unsure words could fit the moment. He tried once more to refuse, saying the gift was too big, but Miss Patel shook her head and said the will was final, signed and witnessed weeks ago. The ink had been witnessed by 2 church friends who said they had never seen the widow so certain since Henry passed. She added that Mrs. Briggs wanted Jack to move in as soon as possible, because the bungalow needed new love and laughter, and that wish could not wait. Jack nodded, unsure words could fit the moment. The lawyer placed a small brass key on the desk, its bow shaped like a treble clef, a quiet reminder of Mrs. Briggs's music life. Its grooves held faint fingerprints from years of turning locks, history pressed into metal. Jack picked up the key, feeling its cool weight, and for a moment the office disappeared, replaced by the porch scent of lemon polish and petunias, memories and plans weaving together like fresh rope. He imagined fixing the roof, repainting the railings bright sky blue, and hosting Saturday music classes where kids tapped their toes to cheerful melodies. Miss Patel handed him a second envelope marked personal, told him to read it later, preferably when he had time to sit quietly, each beat saying you are trusted. Jack thanked her, voice shaky but clear, and promised to honor Mrs. Briggs's trust in every nail he drove and every song that echoed through the house, key resting against his heart. When he stepped outside, sunlight bounced off city windows, and the air seemed fresher, as if the world had opened an extra door just for him. Its white paper seemed to glow with quiet power. He climbed into his old truck, placed the envelopes on the passenger seat, and sat a while with the engine off, listening to distant traffic like gentle drums. A thought rose that he should call his foreman, explain he needed the afternoon off. Then another thought said no, this news deserved to be shared face to face. Its white paper seemed to glow with quiet power. He turned the key, the engine coughing before settling, and drove toward the site. Passing the grocery store where Mrs. Briggs once bought tea bags on sale, he cracked a small grin and kept driving. Along the way, he stopped at a red light and glanced at the personal envelope, curiosity buzzing like power lines, but he kept it sealed as promised. Steam hissed from welding torches, mixing with crane beeps, a rough symphony he had learned to love. At the site, cranes swung steel beams against the sky, and workers in bright vests shouted measurements, the usual noise that felt like home to him. His boots crunched gravel in steady beats like a slow drum roll. Jack parked, walked across gravel, and found Mr. Diaz marking concrete cures on a clipboard. The hard hat tilted back, the slap echoed between stacks of lumber like a friendly gunshot. He handed his foreman the office visitor badge and explained what had happened, stumbling over words until Diaz raised a hand and said, "Slow down, Parker." Jack smiled, feeling lighter than concrete dust. Diaz kept a firm but fair grip, the kind Jack trusted on scaffold days. His laughter boomed like a dropped plank. When Jack finally finished, silence fell around them, even the diesel generators seeming to hush for a breath. Sugary crumbs flew like sparks off a grinder. Diaz whistled, eyes wide, then slapped Jack on the shoulder, so hard dust puffed from his vest, calling him the luckiest good guy he'd ever met. He gathered the crew and made Jack repeat the story, and each time Jack tried to shorten the tale, the workers demanded more detail. Cheering at the gift part, he saw weld sparks spelling tiny treble clefs in his mind. A welder named Rosa wiped her brow and said kindness always poured back like wet cement, finding every gap. Jack pictured music notes dancing over steel. Jack bit into a sweet glazed circle, thinking how strange it was that a simple help on a rainy afternoon could lead to donuts in midday sun. A month later, he would save the splattered boards as keepsakes. As they ate, he told him he planned to keep his job because building things still thrilled him. But he would also start evening classes for local kids at the bungalow. The imagined click of metal felt like applause in a hall. The idea grew fast, like ivy on brick, and volunteers popped up. Rosa offered welding art for the garden gate, and Leon said he could donate spare lumber for benches. The mental sound made him grin wide. Mr. Diaz promised extra gallon cans of leftover paint, laughing that the blue would probably match the Briggs porch perfectly. He could almost hear bolts sliding tight, hearts meeting hearts in shared purpose. Jack looked around at the smiling faces and realized the gift had already begun its true work, pulling people together like bolts in a bridge. The second envelope crinkled softly, waiting like a doorbell. Whatever waited might be bigger than wood or brick. It might be the next layer under his whole life. He took a steady breath, ready for page 2. Jack waited until evening quiet wrapped the job site before he finally slit open the personal envelope, sitting in his truck while the sunset painted steel beams orange, the truck seat groaning as he leaned forward. A single sheet of lined paper slid out, folded twice, and at the top he saw Mrs. Briggs's gentle handwriting that danced a little the way her piano notes once did. She began by thanking him again for saving her memories from the rain and for bringing conversation back to a house that had felt like a museum of silence. The letter said she had watched him from her window each time he returned to patch leaks or tighten porch rails, and each time she felt Henry smiling beside her. Her curtains hardly moved, but her heart did. She wrote that the bungalow was never meant to sit still. It was built for laughter, music, and the scrape of boots that carried stories from the wider world. Mrs. Briggs confessed she had no grandchildren, and the day Jack carried the cedar chest, she decided the best legacy was to adopt the street itself as her family, her wishes written in clear, steady lines. She asked him to accept 3 wishes: teach music to anyone who knocked, fix anything broken within sight of the blue porch, and never forget to rest under the petunias, underlining each request for good measure. Jack's throat tightened as he read that she would probably be gone when he saw these words, because her heart medicine had begun to fail quietly last spring. The next lines told him not to be sad, because good deeds grow like sunflowers. People see the tall stalks first, but deep roots hold everything together unseen, the ink dark and steady on the page. At the bottom, she had drawn a tiny treble clef beside a hammer, then signed her name with a steady flourish that looked stronger than her cane ever let on. Jack pressed the paper to his chest, feeling its rustle like a last handshake, and closed his eyes until truck horns down the highway broke the spell. The dashboard clock ticked louder than usual during the drive. He placed the letter safely in the glove box, started the engine, and drove straight to the bungalow, headlights sweeping over glossy wet leaves from afternoon sprinklers. The porch light was off, but the moon gave enough glow for him to find the spare key under the owl statue Henry had carved long ago from cedar scraps. The statue scented faintly of wood smoke. Inside, the room smelled of lemon oil and distant rain. Every box he had stacked weeks earlier still sat exactly where he left it, patiently waiting to be opened. He could almost hear Mrs. Briggs humming, so he spoke aloud a promise to honor her wishes, his voice echoing from bare walls like a pledge in an empty hall. Early the next morning, he borrowed the company flatbed and asked 3 coworkers to help move his own modest furniture. They showed up with extra muscle and big smiles. Rosa welded a quick welcome sign shaped like a music note and bolted it to the gate before unloading even one chair, saying first impressions matter. Leon carried a stack of leftover plywood he planned to turn into low benches, while Diaz arrived last with 2 buckets of sky blue paint balanced on his shoulders. The neighbors peeked from windows as the crew marched in like a friendly parade, and by noon the sidewalk buzzed with curious chatter and the smell of fresh coffee. Jack set up a folding table on the lawn with markers, asking kids to write ideas for what the new community space should include. Cardboard soon filled with bright wishes. A shy girl named Amina suggested a reading corner, and her brother wanted a spot to practice drumming, so Jack drew rough sketches on scrap lumber right there. By afternoon, they had a plan. Living room would host music, garage would become a tiny fix-it workshop, and backyard garden would grow herbs for neighbors to share. That evening, Jack slept on a mattress in the middle of the empty living room, listening to crickets through open windows, the house creaking like it was stretching happily. He dreamed of Henry tapping nails into porch boards while young Eleanor laughed at an off-key chord, and woke with sunrise gold spilling across newly swept floors. The next week became a blur of swinging hammers, tuning piano strings, and ordering second-hand bookshelves from a thrift shop that offered discounts for community projects, Rosa humming folk songs as sparks flew, each spark spelling the promise of tomorrow. Jack kept his construction job by day, but each night he and volunteers painted, sanded, and arranged until their arms ached and their cheeks shone with proud sweat. On Friday, exactly 1 month after he first carried boxes for Mrs. Briggs, a simple flyer went up on every maple tree. Music and fix-it open house, all welcome. Saturday morning, the bungalow's sky-blue railings gleamed like calm water, and bowls of oatmeal cookies waited on the porch just the way Mrs. Briggs had served them, music crackling through static bringing back younger summers. Families arrived in a gentle tide. Some held broken toasters or wobbly stools. Others carried sheet music or nothing but nervous smiles, unsure what to expect. Jack greeted each guest by name if he knew it or learned it on the spot, handing out stickers shaped like hammers or clefs so people could show what help they needed. Music crackled through static, bringing back younger summers. In the garage, Leon tightened screws on a rusty bike while teaching a boy how to read a wrench size. Nearby, Rosa's sparks danced across steel, each spark spelling the promise of tomorrow. In the living room, Amina read aloud to toddlers, her brother tapping rhythms on an upside-down paint bucket beneath the piano melody Jack played. One elderly couple mended a radio, and soon swing tunes drifted through open windows as marshmallows toasted outside, people hugging strangers goodnight. At sunset, Jack stood on the porch step where he once balanced rain-soaked boxes and told everyone the story of Mrs. Briggs's letter, leaving no eye dry under the amber sky. He ended by asking the crowd to keep the 3 wishes alive, and voices answered like choir chords. "We will," rolling across lawns into the warm air, his voice steady like a beam set true under sunlight. After the last goodbye, Jack locked the front door, noticing the key's worn grooves felt smoother now, as if the metal itself approved of the day's work, the wood grain inside the chest glowing softly. He sat at the piano bench, opened the cedar chest, and placed the personal letter inside among photo albums, whispering that memories and plans could live together, signing his notebook with a hammer and clef. Then he wrote, first open house, fixed 6 items, taught 2 chords, served 40 cookies, met 10 new friends. Mrs. Briggs would smile, his eyes blurring as his voice steadied. A soft knock tapped the door. An elderly man named Mr. Howard held a loose porch board, saying he had known Henry in the war and hoped the workshop could mend both wood and memories, his pride shining bright. Jack stepped aside and said the porch light stayed on for anyone carrying something broken or something hopeful, while a star slipped across the sky and the bungalow breathed in another hopeful night. Summer slid into early fall, and Jack's bungalow buzzed every evening with clanks, chords, and kids' laughter that floated over Maple Street like bright confetti in the crisp air. Neighbors now call the place Blue Porch House, a name Amina painted on a reclaimed plank Leon screwed above the gate, while Rosa added curling steel vines around the letters, ink loops rising like tiny musical hills. A weekly schedule formed without voting. Mondays for music lessons, Tuesdays for tool sharing, Wednesdays for story hour, Thursdays for garden club, and Fridays for open repairs. Jack kept a foyer whiteboard, and visitors wrote needs or ideas. By sunset, the board looked like patchwork, colored squares outlining the week's shared adventure. One September Monday, City Inspector Ms. Nguyen arrived with a safety clipboard to check if the busy house met code, or stickers shaped like smiling hammers. Jack's stomach fluttered, but he served lemonade, walked her past freshly braced joists, and showed new rails Leon had bolted beside the steps for elders' canes. Ms. Nguyen tugged brackets, measured gaps, then grinned and called the workmanship solid enough to teach in trade school. She handed Jack a pamphlet about neighborhood grants for insurance, tools, and youth programs, urging him to apply before autumn closed. That night, volunteers crowded the kitchen table. Even little Eli printed "Eli" in blue marker, and soon signatures covered 2 pages beside a bold mission: "We mend things and hearts with equal care." Rosa sketched a 5-year plan on scrap plywood: build wheelchair ramp, plant fruit trees, record a neighborhood song album. Papers sealed in a manila envelope, Jack slid Mrs. Briggs's treble clef keychain inside as a lucky charm and mailed it next dawn. A week later, a letter said grant officials would visit on Halloween to watch a live session and judge the project. News spread fast. Kids rehearsed ghost songs, and parents stitched costume patches during meetings while tool shelves rattled with fresh energy. Jack declared a work sprint. Every spare hour saw paint rollers gliding, racks sorted, and Leon teaching teens to drill pilot holes without splinters. On the final afternoon before inspection, a storm rolled in like a gray wall, wind flipping leaf piles across the yard. Wind slapped tarps as the garden club staked herbs and Rosa welded anchor plates, thunder rumbling overhead. Lightning cracked, plunging the street into blackout. Silence swallowed saws until thunder's drum roll faded. Amina lit battery lanterns, their yellow glow turning porch shadows into dancing giants that made toddlers gasp then giggle. Just as lights returned, a thick maple limb crashed onto the picket fence, blocking the gate completely. Jack grabbed his chainsaw, donned ear guards, and directed volunteers into a swift assembly line while calm words steadied younger helpers. Rosa marked safe-cut lines, Diaz and Leon hauled segments, and kids wheeled branches to the curb, cheering each bump over roots. An hour later, the walkway cleared, rain stopped, leaving wet bark scent and puddles reflecting lantern light. With no time to rebuild, Jack flipped the boards into a sculpture spelling welcome, letting broken would speak hope. Halloween evening arrived crisp. Pumpkins glowed on stairs, cookies steamed on plates, and Fix-It Fright Night banner fluttered overhead, rainwater dripping from leaves like metronomes. Neighbors strung orange gear-shaped lights between gutters, so even darkness resembled industry, casting cog shadows across fresh paint. Grant officials Ms. Nguyen, Mr. Carter, and Dr. Singh arrived at 6, greeted by a robot costume built from soldered appliance parts. Inside, guitars tuned in one corner, Ms. Lopez's Walker bolt tightened in another, and Mr. Howard read wartime letters to hushed listeners. Dr. Singh studied the repair log. Each entry showed parts used, volunteer hours, and quick jokes cracked during work, and she nodded. Ms. Nguyen sipped garden mint tea brewed by Amina, and said it tasted like hope steeped in leaves, making a masked girl beam. Mr. Carter rolled up and down the new wheelchair ramp twice, declaring it smoother than City Hall's, the rails gleaming after Leon's careful wax buff, proud of the sheen. During music hour, Jack led bricks and beats. Children banged paint can drums, adults clapped, and bass vibrations made window glass hum in harmony. Final chord faded, applause rose, yet Inspector's eyes drifted to the fence sculpture Jack had not hidden. He explained the storm damage and said the mission turned setbacks into welcome signs. Flashlight beams made the letters sparkle like tiny galaxies. Outside, officials admired the improvised art and said storms test communities the way clamps test glue joints. Mr. Carter snapped a photo for the report. Before leaving, they handed Jack a sealed envelope, asking him to open it with everyone present, then drove off as kids chased taillights like fireflies. Porch circle formed. Jack read, "Grant approved, funds available for safety classes, garden expansion, while Rosa's sparkler traced musical notes in midair. Cheers erupted, Amina's mask slipped, Leon lifted Diaz, and neighbors hugged. Moonlight glinted off sparks, turning Rosa's grin quicksilver. Jack raised the treble clef key and thanked Mrs. Briggs aloud, promising the grant was fresh soil for taller sunflowers. Later, alone on the swing, he wrote, "Storm sweat. Song earned us tomorrow." Feeling cool air brush his cheek like a grandmother's hand. Autumn stars blinked like nails in a vast rafter, holding sky and hope together while Blue Porch House rested, ready for dawn's next repair mission. Winter's first breath rolled over Maple Street a week after the grant arrived, carrying crisp air that jingled wind chimes on the Blue Porch House like tiny sleigh bells announcing a new season of work. Jack Parker, bundled in his thick canvas coat, pinned the grant check to the foyer whiteboard beneath the mission statement so every visitor saw proof that kindness produced real paper and bigger dreams. He also taped a fresh calendar beside it, blank squares waiting like snow, and invited children to color each month while grown-ups listed project now possible. Rosa drew welding sparks for January, Leon sketched lumber piles for February, and Amina traced music notes winding through March like vines promising spring concerts. Jack added a blue star on December 24th labeled Neighborhood Talent Night because he believed everyone deserved a stage just as tools deserved a toolbox. The grant's first purchase was insulation rolls. High school teens carried them inside and learned pink fiberglass itched if you forgot gloves, but nobody minded fingers when warmth was the prize. Diaz explained our values in simple words: higher number, warmer toes, and 6-year-old Noor shouted she wanted the warmest toes in town. By noon, the attic rafters gleamed with new batting, and kids used a borrowed thermal camera. Squeals erupted each time blue cold patches shrank on the glowing screen. Funding safety next, Leon ordered bright exit signs, turning installation into a scavenger hunt where each child hunted the doorway that most deserved a glowing guardian. Ms. Lopez, whose walker now rolled smoothly, snipped ribbons for every finished sign and promised cake if tomatoes sprouted before Easter. Garden Club spun its slice on raised cedar beds so wheelchair users could plant without bending, lining frames with burlap and filling them with compost warm as fresh bread. Snowflakes fell while they shoveled soil, steam rising from the dark mix, and the smell of earth in winter felt like a whispered promise. One afternoon, Jack invited Ms. Patel to tour progress. She arrived smiling, carrying a framed photo of Mrs. Briggs laughing over piano keys to hang above the instrument. Seeing the picture made every note played that evening feel like a conversation with the house's first hostess. Miss Patel then read a clause they'd missed. The estate held a scholarship fund for any neighbor attending trade classes, provided Blue Porch House approved. Cheers burst. Rosa nominated Kofi, a quiet teen who fixed bikes with patient hands, suggesting welding school could turn his patience into sparks of art. Blushing, Kofi accepted with a nod, and Jack recorded the first scholarship in a fresh ledger labeled Briggs Seeds. Weekends grew brisk but busy, steam from cocoa mixed with sawdust flakes as Diaz coached cousins through building a ramp extension wide enough for stroller twins. Inside, Amina recorded elders reading winter poems onto CDs, saying stories should travel farther than footsteps. Near the stove, Jack sketched a fold-out stage from old pallets we hoped would hold dreams as wide as a city hall stage. When the first big storm dumped snow, Kofi powered the new blower like a knight revving a dragon, clearing paths for the whole block. Children followed, tossing salt that glittered under streetlights, claiming they sprinkled sugar for snow fairies to keep ankles safe. Mid-December, Rosa wired LEDs in music sync mode. Every clap triggered ripples of color that made siding look alive. Jack taught kids to read kilowatt meters, so flashing lights doubled as math class and budget guard. While inventorying tools, he polished the cedar chest's brass corners until lantern light showed his face beside Eleanor's, then closed the lid with treasure map care. Talent night planning surged, Noor choreographed ribbon twirls, Mr. Howard rehearsed harmonica, and Ms. Nguyen prepared city code jokes for the stage. Leon engineered folding chairs that snapped together like toy bricks, each back painted with a gear or treble clef. Rosa forged owl-shaped keychains stamped BP, all sales earmarked for reading corner books. Rehearsals got loud enough for Jack to borrow a decibel meter. Every beep measured excitement, not noise. 3 days before the show, a blizzard warning flashed. Panic flickered, but Kofi said Mrs. Briggs would turn clouds into an audience, and plans bent instead of breaking. They shoveled early, lining the walkway with jars of battery candles that carved a glowing tunnel through white drifts. Show night arrived. Breath clouds puffed from bundled guests, and the fold-out stage held firm under tapping shoes and fluttering ribbons. Nora's ribbons painted red and gold arcs, cheers louder than any snowblower, and passing plow horns sounded like city-wide applause. Mr. Howard followed, harmonica notes floating gentle as snowflakes while Pinkin drums beat soft heart rhythms. Ms. Nguyen's code comedy earned groans then giggles. She closed declaring subsection H mint here, hope happens, winning big applause. Jack led bricks and beats, every seat back a percussion panel struck by mittened hands as Coco steamed nearby. The siding pulsed like a satisfied heartbeat while snow thickened outside. Sleigh bells rang each time a joke landed, laughter leaking into the frosty yard. Jack opened the ledger and announced keychain sales would send a second student, Nora's sister, to spring coding camp. Faces glowed brighter than string lights, and Jack realized the grant was starter fluid. Neighbors' gratitude was the true fuel, keeping Blue Porch House blazing warm. Snow settled soft as applause on roof shingles while the scholarship ledger closed, and Maple Street slept, sure dawn would bring more stories to build and more hearts to mend. Spring sunlight melted the last rooftop ice, and Blue Porch House woke early each morning to hammer taps echoing like woodpecker songs across Maple Street's fresh green lawns. Jack Parker started each day stretching on the porch, coffee steaming in a chipped mug painted by Nora, reading the scholarship ledger like a coach studying stats, and leaving space for future awards. The grant's second disbursement arrived, and Rosa welded a lockbox beneath the piano bench where funds could rest safe as seeds in a vault. Amina proposed the first neighborhood makers fair, a day where fixing, art, and music would spill into the street so anyone passing could join. Leon drew a chalk street map marking booths for bike repair, herb pot painting, coding demos, and a pet clinic run by Ms. Patel's veterinarian cousin. Kofi drafted metal banners shaped like open hands to hang from light poles, fingers forming silent applause. Diaz persuaded Jack to request a road closure permit. Ms. Nguyen filed forms, joking subsection H now meant here, big fairs happen. Planning nights ran late. Kids folded paper birds for decorations while elders tested cupcake flavors after story hour. Rain threatened once, but Mr. Howard said clouds respect houses that sing, and sure enough, gray banks drifted off after a porch chorus. 2 weeks before the fair, a local news spot dubbed Blue Porch House a blueprint for neighborly progress, inspiring donations of screws, yarn, and stage lights labeled Shine Forward. Jack logged every gift, teaching younger helpers that budgets are friendships written in numbers. Nora's sister, fresh from coding camp, built a website. Overnight, visitor sign-ups popped like popcorn. City barricades arrived orange. Volunteers painted them sky blue, so caution and welcome shared the same color. Mrs. Briggs's cedar owl got new varnish on a perch extension, its gaze gleaming wise and welcoming. Lanterns glowed under blooming maples the night before launch, casting petal shadows over chalk arrows guiding guests. Jack walked the route tightening booth bolts, fuel-checking generators, and patting the lockbox for luck. Dawn brought cinnamon roll aroma from Ms. Lopez's window and sawdust as Leon cut last-minute steaks. Vendors rolled in gear. Rosa's sparks fizzed on a welcome arch until first visitors cheered, mistaking weld glow for fireworks. At 9, Amina clipped a ribbon, and the Makers Fair opened with a shout. Build it better, share it faster. Kids guided families with laminated maps on clothespins so no paper chased wind. In the bike booth, Kofi taught toddlers to oil chains, their tiny hands shiny as pennies when wheels spun smooth. At the coding tent, an LED matrix scrolled visitor names, each badge chiming softly via NFC. Pets got low-cost shots. A puppy yelped then licked the vet's cheek, winning applause louder than Jack's drill. Painted herb pots revealed secret words under UV flashlights, grow and laugh, sparking delighted gasps. Mr. Howard read wartime letters beside a drone demo, noting both were ways to send love home. A breeze fluttered hand banners overhead. Jack stopped to feel his heart drum like a parade bass. News crews filmed Diaz patching drywall. His demo board grinned with a smiley face and joint compound. Volunteers refilled water coolers while Rosa welded souvenir key rings stamped 2026, minting history early. A stumble near the stage proved minor. Leon reglued a shoe sole, the vet checked an ankle, and cheers rose for the quickest fix. Clouds gathered by 3. A weather huddle moved music into the garage and handed out take-home repair kits. Rain hammered roofs, but shelter share ran smooth. Coco steamed, coding demos projected onto garage doors. Inside, guitars strummed alongside hammer pings, a new genre Kofi dubbed folk fix fusion, streamed live to viewers stuck at home. Sun burst through steam, rainbow shards flashing in cooling weld sparks as kids spread towels over benches. Asked what kept things running, Jack pointed to the cedar owl, a promise written in piano notes and porch nails. Raffle winners grinned. Ms. Lopez took home a solar lantern kit for nighttime tomatoes. Dusk painted the sky peach as chairs stacked and supplies tallied. Nothing broke. Everything mended, surplus shared. Jack wrote in his notebook, built better, shared faster, rained briefly, heart stayed dry, and slid the page into the cedar chest. He locked the box, listening to the key click like applause fading. Streetlights flicked on. Paper birds rustle above, whispering next time in the mild breeze. Blue Porch House slept beneath star nails in the vast night rafter, ready for tomorrow's blueprint of help. Summer eased onto Maple Street with warm mornings and long, golden evenings, and the Blue Porch House breathed as if the boards themselves loved the change in weather. Jack Parker stood on the porch rail, tightening one last banner that read, Year One Celebration, and the letters fluttered like bright fish in a friendly breeze. Inside, the cedar owl watched from its perch, eyes shining after a fresh polish Rosa applied using soft cloth and lemon oil. The scholarship ledger lay open beside the piano, showing 3 full pages of names, mechanics students, welders, and a young baker who promised free cupcakes forever. Nora's sister, fresh from coding camp, had turned those pages into a colorful infographic that now hung in the foyer for everyone to see. Leon sorted his toolbox, humming, because City Hall had asked him to speak about building safe ramps from scrap lumber. Diaz rehearsed a short talk on teamwork for the celebration, planning to end by handing out tiny levels engraved with Stay True. Amina practiced a new song on the piano, each note ringing clear like drops in a still pond, drifting out the windows onto the front lawn. Kofi welded a small frame for a photo wall, sparks dancing around him while kids placed prints of the past year's best moments onto clothespins. Ms. Lopez chopped mint from garden beds now bursting with bright leaves, planning big pitchers of iced tea that would cool every thirsty throat. Mr. Howard, stronger after winter walks, framed one of Henry Briggs's old porch nails to give Jack as a full-circle gift. City Inspector Ms. Nguyen arrived early, clipboards swapped for balloons, joking that subsection H now also meant happy anniversary. Mrs. Patel followed, carrying envelopes with the next scholarship checks, her glasses fogging in the warm air, but her smile never dimming. By noon, neighbors gathered, filling folding chairs painted sky blue, the treble clef backs catching sun in cheerful flashes. Jack cleared his throat and began the program, voice steady but eyes bright, thanking everyone for turning a single act of help into a year of hope. He pointed at the owl, at the nail, and at the banner, saying each symbol showed that strong things often start small. Leon told the crowd how ramps changed lives, and children clapped because they remembered pushing toy strollers down smooth planks. Diaz raised a tiny engraved level, saying teams keep each other straight, and handed one to every volunteer like a secret superpower. Nor twirled a new ribbon routine, red streamers forming heart shapes against the blue house, drawing oohs and phones held high. Amina played her song, adding lyrics about hammers and hugs, and the simple chorus was so catchy even shy guests joined in. Ms. Patel announced the scholarship winners, calling each name while Kofi clicked snapshots for the photo wall frame. A hush fell when she added a surprise. Part of the Briggs estate had matured, doubling the scholarship fund for future years. Jack blinked hard as cheers broke out, and someone launched confetti that drifted like slow rain in the summer air. Next, Ms. Nguyen presented an official city plaque naming Blue Porch House an urban kindness hub, causing Leon to pump his fist in triumph. Rosa unveiled a tiny steel sunflower sculpture welded from scrap, its petals etched with everyone's initials around the center. She planted it in the herb bed where it caught full sunlight, promising it would turn orange at dusk and glow like a campfire ember. Children tugged Jack to the new mural wall, where they had painted Mrs. Briggs at her piano, Henry with his hammer, and Jack holding a cookie plate. Jack traced the brushstrokes, whispering thanks to faces now living only in songs and stories, yet present in every nail and note. Ms. Lopez rang a dinner bell, and lines formed for mint tea, grilled corn, and cupcakes iced to look like little toolboxes. At sunset, Leon switched on the LED siding. Lights pulsed warm gold, matching fireflies blinking across the lawn. Diaz lit a small fire pit built from leftover bricks, and neighbors toasted marshmallows while Nora read short jokes from her notebook. A gentle wind carried Amina's piano melody outdoors, blending with crackling wood and distant cricket songs. Jack opened the cedar chest once more, placing the city plaque inside until a suitable display case could be built. He left the chest lid wide this time, telling everyone that memories breathe better when not shut away. Under moonlight, Kofi's photo wall filled its last clip, and kids raced to count faces. There were more than 100 smiles on the frame. Ms. Nguyen signed the event log as best inspection ever, then taped her balloon to the porch rail where it bobbed like a happy watchdog. Jack ended the evening with a notebook entry read aloud. 12 months, countless fixes, 10 scholarships, one growing family, promise kept. The crowd echoed, promise kept, their voices floating upward like lanterns released into the star-stitched sky. Lights dimmed, chairs folded, and the sunflower sculpture glowed orange just as Rosa predicted, a steel reminder of roots and growth. Blue Porch House rested under gentle night, owl watching, stars steady, and everyone certain that year two would build even higher toward shared dreams.